Hey guys, it's Sandra from Inspired Keys, and today I'm here to answer a question from Inspired Keys Academy member Rachel. Rachel asks, I'm hoping to build a good foundation in worship keys, and one goal is that eventually I hope to be able to incorporate tritones, dissonances, 7th, 9th, 11th, and 13th into my playing. So this is a pretty advanced question, and in fact, here's a little interesting piece of information. Rachel happens to be my ex-student when I was teaching in a secondary school in Singapore. So it's a really small world when I saw that, hey, Rachel signed up as an Inspired Keys Academy member. And Rachel was an O-level music student, so that also means naturally I will expect that she knows what all these terms are. So most people probably won't know it, and I will now quickly explain what she's just meant when she said she hopes to incorporate tritones, dissonances, and stuff like that. So firstly, a tritone is this really pretty, I guess, dissonant sounding chord, or rather it's two notes, but first, you have to know what a tone is. A tone is when you have a major second interval. So like, for example, to this, like a C to D is a tone. So that's one tone. And then you have a second tone that builds up on top of that, which is from a D to E. And then you have a third one that builds up on the E, which in this case is, okay, now why F sharp? Because E to F is a semitone, and we don't want semitones, we're talking about tones. So a tone is a full step, and a semitone is a half step. So in this case, a tritone will be a stack of 3 full steps. So from here to here, 1, 2, and 3. So a tritone creates this sound. And you probably didn't smile when you heard that because it doesn't sound good. In fact, when we learned about intervals back in school, our teacher used to introduce this as the Simpsons interval, where you would hear the Simpsons, you know, and so then the Simpsons songs goes on, but you've got like this bad sound, and typically you would even use it for like a haunted house or something that sounds bad. Now Rachel is saying that she's trying to want to incorporate something like a tritone. So before I go on to talking about that, I will explain what the other things are. So she also wants to incorporate dissonances. So in general, a dissonance will be the opposite of something that sounds good or harmonious or consonant. A dissonance will be something that kind of clashes. So like a tritone is a bit of a dissonance, or maybe a minor second that typically doesn't sound good. Now, if I were to take the C sharp up an octave, or rather I take the C up an octave, it also doesn't sound good. This is a major 7th interval, so it doesn't sound good either. So you probably won't want to like expressly have that kind of a sound in your song unless it's weaved into something that sounds good. And so what are 7th, 9th, 11th, and 13th? Now these are just chords that are pretty complex. Most chords you have sort of just a triad like that. Now if you add another third on top, that's a third. So if you add another third on top, it becomes a 7th chord. And if you add another chord, another third on top, it becomes a 9th chord. And then another third on top becomes an 11th chord. And then if you add another third on top, it becomes a 13th chord. And you won't have a 15th, because if you add another third, you do come right back to C, which is a full circle, so there's no need for that. So let's get started about using things like that. It's all really cool and fancy, but we do need to think about our role as worship keyboardists. Remember, it is all about what is conducive to worship, as opposed to what kind of chord we want to use and how cool we want to sound. Because if we do use some cool stuff and in the end we have diverted everyone's attention away from God and onto your playing, then we've kind of failed in our job in bringing people into the Holy of Holies and ministering to people and trying not to distract them. So that's really the main goal of worship keyboardists, or worship musicians in general, right? We're just here to bring people to God or bring the presence of God down. So we want to really minimize the distraction. So what happens when you incorporate a lot of these dissonances and tritones and complex chords is that you run the risk of possibly getting attention away from God and onto yourself. So we want to guard against that. Sometimes a lot of these complex chords can have a very effective gospel feel, which works particularly well if you are playing in the gospel genre. So when it comes to gospel stuff, I will highly recommend checking out Jamal Hartwell. He has his own kind of genre called neo soul, which is really cool. I'll link below a video that is his sort of jamming to Jesus at the Center, which I came across this video so many years ago, and I was so in love with the complex chords that he uses, and he kind of breaks it down and shows you how to do it. Now, this is obviously not an affiliate thing, or I don't even know Jamal, but I do admire him from afar, and I do want to introduce you to him if you are also looking at learning complex stuff. However, something that we want to really pay attention to will be the genre of music that we play. So if you play in sort of like a typical contemporary church that sings a lot of Hillsong and Bethel and Planet Shakers and Chris Tomlin, then a lot of the songs are really simple. And I think they kept it simple for that reason, where they want the general church with general musicianship to be able to play. If everything was like complex jazz chords and stuff, it would be really hard for most people to play in church. So yeah, it's kept simple for that reason, and we want to be genre sensitive. So is it okay if we start like jazzifying Hillsong songs? I mean, we could, but will it still sound like Hillsong? Will it be suitable for the genre? You gotta kind of use your discretion on that, and sometimes I feel like maybe it won't, because if Hillsong and Bethel songs start using like a ton of complex chords, then they kind of lose their flavor, I think. So sometimes it's just not appropriate, and I won't necessarily recommend it if it's not appropriate and if it's distracting. I do have to say that minor chords in general are pretty good for complex chords. So something like, so I'm just using like a general chord progression of F, G, and A minor. So when it comes to minor chords, like, I find that the clean version of the simple chord like is a little bit too simple. So I do find that minor chords in general are great for sevenths. I would probably play this without any hesitation, so adding the G inside. Do I think adding a B there, which would be the ninth, is suitable? I don't necessarily think so. It can sound good, but it depends on how you play it. So in this case, it kind of sounds like a longing factor where the B kind of longs to resolve up to a C. But if you don't, it even sounds quite like bittersweet or tugging at your heartstrings. So yeah, in that case, I might actually put in a ninth. Now let's explore, what if it's a 7th, 9th, and 11th. So in this case, for the A minor, let's see how I might do this. So the D doesn't have to be the one on top here. It could also be the one like down here. And no, you don't have to play all the notes in a complex chord. So for example, yeah, you don't have to make sure that every single note is represented. You could sort of just cut out some of the notes in between. Maybe the G and the B, you don't play it, and you just play a D there and like something like so. So it becomes a bit like a G on top of an A minor chord, and that can sound pretty cool too, but it kind of once again depends on how you play it and whether it sounds cohesive or not. So minor chords are a good place to experiment with complex chords in general. In general, also, dissonances are good if they resolve. I think it's a little bit like in when we sing Christian songs, we usually come to God and we ask God to solve our problems. And when things sort of resolve, it's a little bit like solving a problem and God just coming and ministering to us and helping us to feel better. So when we have a dissonance, it's okay, but try to resolve it. And so that's a little bit like suspension and resolution. So for example, I usually have a 4-3 suspension when I play chord 5s. So like I'll play, instead of a normal, like a 5 in chords, in C major will be a chord G, I would not play like this. I would play with a 4 and a 3 that resolves. So in a sense, that is a dissonance because of the sound, but then you resolve it down to the B, so in the end it becomes a nice sound. So dissonances are okay, but when you resolve them, it then sounds good and in a sense is more appropriate for Christian worship music. But this is really my opinion, guys, and you are welcome to differ in your opinion. Now, if you do, leave it in the comment below because I'd love to just see a little discussion on what you think about what I've thrown out here in this video to Rachel's question. So thank you very much, Rachel, for asking such a good question. If you are like Rachel and you have questions to ask about worship keys playing, maybe you're struggling to play a song, maybe you are kind of like stuck where you are, maybe you're a beginner and you don't know how to begin playing worship keys, the Inspired Keys Academy is here to help you. Not only do you get to access teaching videos that I've created 24/7, you can also access the 31 Days to Better Worship Keyword Playing ebook. And if you ask me a worship keys question, I will answer it with priority because you're a member. So if you have an interest to check out the Inspired Keys Academy, then go to inspiredkeys.com/join and I look forward to seeing you there. If this video helped, be sure to give it a thumbs up, and if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button right now. So thanks so much for watching and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!